Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 522, our top 5 cooperative games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Game Toppers makes the most amazing accessories for your games. Great table toppers, great visual mats. I mean, they're not just visual, they're actually tactile and everything, but they look amazing.
They do look amazing.
Great accessories to go with those even. You've got your awesome cup holders, you've got dice towers, leaves that will cover your table so you can leave a game set up and then eat dinner.
Wait, did you say you could use those leaves so you could leave the table?
I think I did.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same
I don't know.
there.
I just don't know why you would put the leaves over your game and then eat dinner. You put the leaves over your game so that you can set up another game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
Right?
That's a great point. Now, I mentioned table toppers, but the cool thing is you don't have to have a table. Now they have their own legs. Go to GameToppersLLC.com and check them out. First try.
Nailed it.
I'm so impressed, Dave.
I know.
Disappointed right now.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
Look up here. Look up here.
Chevy Chase? Or no, that's Steve Martin.
That was Steve Martin. But I'm just excited because I am Dave Holliday.
I'm excited that I'm Andy Holiday.
Is that a question mark at the end?
Kind of.
I'm always excited to be Doug Stewart. And actually, we just introduced my kids to that movie for the first time like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
My wife was like,
show.
we've got to show them The Three Amigos. And I hadn't seen that for so many years. Honestly, I was still just absolutely just losing it. It was so funny. And my kids did not find the same enjoyment. They're like, what is this dumb show?
Oh, humor is lost on the youth today. That is such a great show.
It really is. That moment when he gets shot in the arm. He's like, hey, you're using real bullets. And what does he like choose him out about the committee? He's
I'm
like,
gonna take this.
"Yeah, the movie association's going to have their way with you. And then he's like, it's real.
It's all real.
It's all real. He's like crying, like, we're
crying,
going to die. Great movie. And we are the hosts.
And we are the hosts. We have a webpage. It's full of Meeple Nation goodness. There are blogs, there are photos, there are links to all of our past episodes. And also at the top of that is a link to our Patreon page. We love our patrons, and we're so grateful for the support that they provide for the Hodcast.
Yeah.
It is pretty hot.
It is.
It is a
Except for I
Hodcast.
said Hod.
Oh.
So
It would have been better if you'd said Hoth.
Or Hog.
the Hoth.
Oh, yeah. Our Hogcast. That's pretty good.
Hogcast. I'm hungry now.
Yeah. It is getting to be barbecue season, so we do need to get that going. Andy and I were just talking about that beforehand.
Isn't every season barbecue season for this group?
I didn't know barbecue had a season. I thought it was just year round.
Yeah, it's just year round. Well, when we can gather outdoors and not have to gather around a fire and cuddle. Actually, we should do that more, where we all just cuddle around a fire.
Pulled pork and
Pulled
brisket.
pork and brisket and
Yeah.
yeah.
Bacon.
I'll cuddle with bacon anytime.
This whole conversation quickly downward spiral. Eject. Anyways, on our page, we do have a link to that Patreon page. If you would like to join us as a patron, jump over to there. Don't hop or skip. Jump on over there to get there as quick as you can. We would love to have you as part of the podcast. Also, we have an email, meeplenation@gmail.com. Please feel free to email us anytime. We love to interact with you, our listeners.
So true.
And on that note, that's going to lead us into the game banter portion of this episode. And I think we've got some fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so Richie introduced us to a really cool roll and write called Rolling Realms.
Fleet the Dice game. Oh, rolling. Wait, what?
Rolling Realms. Did you not get a chance to play Rolling Realms?
I did. He taught a couple. He taught Fleet the dice game and he taught Rolling Realms.
I really liked Rolling Realms.
Did you?
I
Yeah,
did.
you did.
I ended up buying it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I felt like Greg a little bit. Each board that you play on is based on a different Stonemaier game. And you have 3 in front of you at a time. You play for 3 rounds. Every single board plays a little bit differently, and you can try to get them to synergize off of each other. And I don't know, it's just really kind of a cool game. I got the chance to play that with my wife a couple times, and I taught my girls last night. Been a hit so far.
It's one I'm looking forward to playing with my wife because I think she will very much enjoy it. Like Richie mentioned, that you mentioned it right now, but Richie mentioned it the other day, this is one of those games where if you just have multiple copies, they can merge together without any increase in game time, confusion, because everybody's really kind of playing on their own tableau area or their own boards. Really nice to be able to expand it out to play with a large group.
It's the ultimate multiplayer solitaire game.
It is.
Which which we may be talking about a little bit later in this episode. Kind of the point, right? So Jamie Stegmaier, when he was designing Rolling Realms, that was what he was going for. That he developed that during the pandemic when people couldn't get together.
Right.
And so he wanted it to be one where as long as you could get the dice result, you could have big groups playing together.
Yep, and it took us this long to get it to our table. I had it forever, and I never played my copy until Richie picked up his own copy. Because Richie's been on this crazy, I gotta get every single rolling right out there.
Which is really funny because he's historically not been a very big fan of rolling rights.
But it's something that he can get his wife to play.
There have been a bunch lately that he's played that are better than maybe they used to be, and so he's becoming more of a fan.
They are getting better. And I would say that's kind of true for Andy as well. In fact, I would say Andy's kind of becoming our resident Meeple Nation roll and write lover.
That's probably true. I really do enjoy roll and writes now. The whole concept of it seemed really dumb to me at first.
Nice.
It just really did. I was not drawn to it at all. And then I played a few and I'm like, they're okay. And I don't remember which one it was that really just hooked me.
Twilight Inscription?
Well, it could be Twilight Inscription, but I honestly liked roll and writes before Twilight Inscription.
Did you?
But that's probably the one that's like, okay, yeah, I'm sold.
Okay.
Because Twilight Inscription is amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is fantastic. We don't usually get to have Dave here at the table.
And that's super exciting.
And we are excited to have Dave here. So I got to know, what have you been playing recently? What have you been able to get to the table?
Hardly anything. I've still been able to get a few turns in every once in a while online. Recently, I've decided to try and commit a little bit more time to games. So I've been able to play a couple recently. There's another one that Richie taught me. I think it's actually Nathan's game, Terraforming Mars, the dice game.
Yeah.
And that was pretty fun. Not my favorite Terraforming Mars game. There are a couple of things that I felt like I definitely want to play it again and see if I feel the same way about it. But totally worth playing again.
Terraforming Mars sort of feels at this point like it's one of those properties that Stronghold Games is just going to milk for everything it's worth. And I think the fear is that it's a cash grab. Okay, well, what else can we throw Terraforming Mars on? Because anything with Terraforming Mars sells. So I was a little bit worried about that. Definitely my least favorite way to play Terraforming Mars, but it really wasn't bad. Decent gaming experience.
I actually liked it a lot. I think it was my second favorite way to play Terraforming Mars.
As opposed to not playing it?
Well, Ares Expedition is probably my number one.
Okay.
And then Terraforming Mars, the dice game. And that's it.
There's only the two.
There's only the two.
Nice. I definitely enjoyed Ares Expedition more than the dice game. And I think I would still prefer to play the base game over the dice version. But it wasn't bad. And much shorter, right? Much shorter experience than the regular base game of Terraforming Mars.
I would agree with that, except last night when I was not involved, I was trying to get my wife to go home so that I could study. Richie invited her to play again with his wife. It was a very long game of Terraforming Mars, the dice game.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It was...
there were some arguments at the table, too.
Really? Did the table get tipped over?
It almost did. It got threatened, actually.
Did it really?
It did.
Because of the game or because of other things?
Because Richie's wife was having a hard time understanding the rules, and Richie was getting loud and impatient, which made her more impatient. She did threaten to turn the table over.
I didn't know that.
The death spiral.
There was a little bit of rage going on during Terraforming Mars, the dice game.
The Terraforming Mars death spiral.
Well, on that nut, what other highlights do you have, Andy?
That's all my highlights, Nathan. I
Oh,
have
you did
the same
his.
highlight as you.
Oh, do you? Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. All of us got the chance to play Halloween, a hidden movement game. We talked about this, Andy. It was one of the games you picked to talk about on our news several
A few
episodes
months ago.
back.
Yeah, a few months ago.
One that I picked up. I enjoy hidden movement games similar to Fury of Dracula, Spectre Ops, in that field, except for this version is very condensed. It was a shorter game,
It's very condensed.
which made it very much more enjoyable, I think, because even
Yeah.
if you're losing, it's not like, oh, just kill Dracula or oh, just get back to the safe zone and Spectre Ops. And I think in all 3 games that we've played, there was an element of suspense, of trying to find out where Michael Myers is going to show up.
I would say more so than in Fury of Dracula.
I think so too.
I felt that substantially more than in Fury of Dracula.
Well, I
For
felt
sure.
that Michael Myers was more of a threat
Absolutely.
than Fury of Dracula.
Yeah, for sure. Or Letters to Whitechapel, same thing, right?
Yeah.
There was definitely more anxiety at the table.
100%. Well, Fury of Dracula's not always trying to hunt the hunters. In fact, oftentimes, most of the time, he's trying to avoid them completely.
True.
Right.
And most of these games,
it's
that's what
it's a I'm going to run away, and the other players at the table are trying to hunt them down. And it seems like all of these games try something different. Beast, the beast will pop up on the board from time to time. It's usually because they're trying to kill like NPC characters, not the actual hunter characters.
Right.
Kind of get to see where the beast is at, but it's not really hunting the players. It's hunting other things. Mind Management did some different things. We still haven't played Sniper Elite, and I really want to. That's the one that I really want to see if I enjoy, because I don't like these types of games. But when you just turn it into a straight up that one person is just trying to go murder the others,
Yeah.
it worked.
It worked really well.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, very simple and like not my favorite game in the world now. It did work. It was very good. It was a lot of fun. There's a couple of great moments too, because as you're moving around, Mike Myers disappears, right? You can't see him unless you end your turn and you're facing him. But also, if you pass through his space, then all of a sudden the person playing him will yell, "Stop!" and there was a few moments there where it was like, "Ah!" like, oh no.
We played with Greg, and he actually,
he jumped.
and he was.
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I really like the element of Michael Myers hiding, and he could be hiding in plain sight, and that suspense of, I don't know which way to go, because if I turn and go out that door, he could be standing right next to me.
Especially if you've seen him recently. But
Yeah.
Because you're just like, oh crap, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where is he? He could have gone this way. He could have gone over here. Played it first. It was you, David, and myself.
Right.
It seemed like at first you were chasing me and then you were totally going after David. It was kind of fun to try to figure out where in the world did he go. And it really felt like you were kind of in the middle of this horror movie. You just saw him and you're like, crap, he disappeared. I need to go this way, but I really don't want to run into him, especially when you were as hurt as David was.
Yeah, and not only did we just see him, but you just saw him. He like totally swiped at me,
Right.
and slashed me, whatever. Of course, I returned the favor and hit him in the face with a shovel, and then shot him.
And he still came back. Because that's the nice thing is he has health of 12 and the players have a health of 3 to 4. The threat of him attacking you is real. And he's rolling 3 attack dice. Victims, as it calls, are rolling 1 attack dice unless they have some special ability that will increase that, or a weapon.
Right.
And the first game we played, I played Michael Myers in all 3 times that I've played. The first time I was very hold back. I'm going to try to drag this out. 3-player games, you have to last 18 turns. And if I last 18 turns, then I win. However, the victims, there's 4 quadrants on the game, and they have to go through stack of cards in each of the quadrants. And they have to recover Tommy, the little girl. I can't remember the little girl.
The 2 kids.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I don't remember their names.
Tommy, Lindsay, and then you have to find one of the
car
sets.
keys.
Yeah, there's 2 cars, and you have to find the correct car keys to one of those. And then at least one victim has to get to the car with Tommy and Lindsay and the correct car keys and drive away. They don't even have to have everybody else with them. Just that person has to get that stuff together.
Now, one of the questions I had, is that always the objective? Is the game always played that? Is that always the primary objective, to find the kids and get out?
For the victims, yes.
Okay.
And for Michael Myers, it's drag it out to either, don't know what it is for 2 players, but for 3 players is 18 rounds. 4 players, it was 24 rounds.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really did like about it was the fact that the fear of death is real, because you will die. In fact, almost certainly players will die at the table. But when you die, you grab one of the spares and you bring them out, and suddenly they join the maps. You start playing from there. And that's one of Mike Myers' win conditions is killing. Is it 3?
3 for 4 players,
For a
3
game,
players.
three players, yeah. Threat is real.
Like I said, the first games I was very passive with my attacks. The second and the third game, I was very much an aggressive player, and it still felt like those stacks in each of the quadrants were way too shallow. Victims were able to go through those really quick. I've lost all 3 times as Michael Myers, but I've had a ton of fun with it.
You'll get us one day, sport.
Yeah. I'm hoping.
You're not a very good serial killer.
No,
Nathan.
no, unless that's Frankenberries. Then I'll kill Frankenberries.
Nice.
Very good. Well, I was super excited. This last week, I had a big box of goodies show up at my doorstep. Game that I've been waiting for about 3 years now finally showed up. This is the sequel to The Seventh Continent. This is The Seventh Citadel. Busted that out and flipped through the rule book, started playing through it, and it is awesome.
And had you played Seventh Continents before? Have you played seven continents?
Seventh.
Had you played Seventh Continent before?
Yes.
Okay.
I've played it quite a bit.
And how do you compare the two?
Seventh Citadel fixed everything that was wrong with Seventh Continent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That makes me kind of want to play it. I enjoyed Seventh Continent, but it wore on me.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that gave me lasting joy.
Yeah. So in Seventh Citadel, you actually have life points, and you get to spend those points on reshuffling cards into your deck to give yourself to extend your life. And you don't ever shuffle in those like, you die immediately cards. If one of those gets put at the top of the deck, you just are done. You know what I mean? From Seventh Continent, that mechanic was really, really awful. The other thing too is like it's a huge base building component of the game. The story is bizarre, but it's really cool. Basically, like there's this war between the Necro Druids and the Worm King. Actually pretty thematic and fun, but you start off as these prisoners who break out, and this all happens in the early part of the story, so it's not much spoilers, but you break out and then some things happen, and basically you have to establish your presence, and I won't say more than that to avoid spoilers. So there's a really, really fun base building component to this. The whole mantra of the Seventh Continent or Seventh Citadel thing, the whole thing they push is this whole mantra with the Seventh Continent, Seventh Citadel games is this idea that it's explore, build, you are the hero. That's the whole thing, right? And with Seventh Continent, you didn't feel like the hero. Just straight up, it didn't.
Right.
It didn't have
feel
that.
like
The tons of exploration, and the building came by way of crafting items and
Check.
stuff, and they had that, but it was kind of a brutal system. It was hard to master and do well. No, you were like cursed and constantly fighting for survival and super weak and felt like you could die really easy. You definitely did not feel heroic. In Seventh Citadel, you feel like you are the hero. They really amped that part of the game up. And rather than building, so they actually got rid of the crafting system so that you don't craft items. Instead, you have like a purse that can hold a certain amount of weight, and you just throw items that you find in there and use them when it's appropriate. And it works really, really well. It's actually way better than the crafting system. But the base building's super fun. The exploration is really fun. It has shorter, more bursty missions that form a campaign. The advantage of having like a base camp. If you remember from Seventh Continent, the idea was you started off and you just went and went until you either won or died. And in this one, you kind of venture out to do a certain thing, and then you come back, and then you venture out to do another thing, and then you come back. And every time you come back, you have the ability to sort of upgrade, spend your points, make some decisions, earn rewards, that sort of thing. So I think they learned a lot of lessons from the Seventh Continent, and the Seventh Citadel is fantastic. I actually highly, highly recommend it.
Excellent. I would be interested in trying that at some point for sure. Is that everybody?
That's it.
All right.
So now that our highlights are done, let's move into the next section. We do have we want to visit the mailbag here for a minute because we did get a great question from our good friend Salvatore. He says, in our beloved hobby, some games are known for their lack of player interaction, which to players like me who enjoy the social aspects of our hobby can be a bad thing. Those games are often labeled as multiplayer, solitaire, efficiency puzzles. And Euro games often fall into this category. I would also add that roll and write, flip and writes definitely heavily fit into that category.
Yes.
So it's not just Euros. There's a bunch. It says, for instance, bargaining, bidding, alliance forming, attacking other players, verbal cooperation and coordination, interactive drafting, playing take that cards, and open trades are all types of player interaction. One term that is used less often is player interconnectivity. These are actions that players take that affect other players without directly interacting with them. These can include things like space blocking, market purchases, finite shared resource pools, open scores, or victory points that may force a player to change tactics to catch up with another player, and shared AI enemies can be considered player interconnectivity. And I like that term, player interconnectivity. I think that's good. Yep. So his question is, are there any games that you think are unfairly maligned as multiplayer solitaire games that are in fact embedded with a subtle or rich player interconnectivity? Salvatore. And I think that's kind of an interesting question, the definition of what is going to be multiplayer solitaire and what would be player interconnectivity. I think it's going to vary a little bit from person to person because I don't think that's like a solidly defined thing necessarily. One of the games that I think started off as a really, really strong multiplayer solitaire game is Wingspan.
For sure.
I think as time has gone on with the expansions, I think it's kind of pulled itself out of that. There's still strong multiplayer solitaire elements, but with the expansions, and in particular, the more recent Asia expansion, there's a lot more of that subtle player interaction. So things are triggering all the time. Like when one person's running their row of birds, it's doing things for other players. Different players are getting food and benefits. You're watching for when other players do certain things because it allows you to, lay an egg or do things like that. So,
because I love the term player interconnectivity as well, and the idea that a little distinction between some of those games, so we don't just have those two kind of polar opposite groupings. But with Wingspan in particular, what about the round end goals? It's two-sided, right? The one side
or the food resources.
I do understand what Dave's saying, because on the one side, you've got just like, you just get points straight up for whatever the condition is. And on the other one, it's like a race. You are racing with the other players, because if you don't have the most, doesn't matter how many there are, if you don't have the most, you don't score those points. And there's kind of a track that works that way.
It's a very small part of the game, specifically put that in there originally to try and get it a little bit more to that player interconnectivity.
Well, plus you have the bird feeder, which is directly affecting other players. True. And you have, at least with the Asia expansion, you are competing for whomever uses the most nectar in each of the rows, which is also has some player interconnectivity to it. So yeah, I think with the Asia expansion, it definitely added a lot more of that and made it less solitary.
Yeah. Technically, the nectar expansion was the Oceania.
That's right. It was the Oceania.
Yeah, nectar was Oceania.
Right. Yeah,
but,
you're right.
But yes, and that's a good example, right? Because with the expansions, it feels like slowly they've gotten more and more interconnected.
Right.
Birds that trigger on different things. There's a race to certain good birds that are out in the middle of the display. I actually think Wingspan has a lot of interconnectivity, but I hear it. The reason I bring it up first and foremost is because I hear it called a multiplayer solitaire game all the time. And I don't think it is. Definitely not like a high player interaction game, but it has a lot of that player, what are we calling it? The interconnectivity that I like.
There's a lot of games where you are creating your own tableau. I mean, I bring up games like Soul, Framework, Nova Luna, even games like Sagrada, thank you.
Yep.
You're working. I mean, there's a shared pool, so there is kind of that interconnectivity that's going there, but where everybody is just working on their own tableau, their own area that's in front of them that isn't manipulated at all by your opponent, other than limiting resources. I totally get that whole...
Sure.
Where you're not involved with each other.
And this is where opinions may vary just a little bit. And I don't think anybody's right or wrong necessarily.
For sure.
But if you take, for example, Azul and Sagrada, let's look at those two examples specifically. The drafting component of both of those games is so important to the game. I mean, how you draft in Azul, because you can just straight up counter draft other people in Azul.
Absolutely.
And you can do the same in Sagrada. It's a little harder, but because of the way that Sagrada snake drafts, that draft is such a heavy component to the game, that interconnectivity, who's taking what and what you get left with. To me, that is such an important part of the game that I would hesitate to call either one of those games multiplayer solitaire, for me personally. because that's such a big component. You are working on your own tableau. You're working on your own stuff at the end of the game.
And it goes to the caliber of who you're playing with, too. Not necessarily the caliber, but
Definitely.
the style of their play. Because I play Azul, Acropolis, Framework with my wife, and those games go a lot different than when playing with our friend Jody. My games with Jody are very not high intense, making every effort to stick you with, well, you only have one spot, and I'm going to try to stick you with the 4 tiles. Whereas I'm playing more casual with my wife, I want to make sure that anything that happens in the game stays in the game and doesn't roll over to the dinner table or anything like that. But we're playing something with friends like you guys here, or even Jody playing online, intensity kind of goes up that eliminates more of that interconnectivity and make it really become more of a competitive game. Because I know Salvatore plays a lot of Seven Wonders Duel with his wife. That game is also one where, depending on what you're drafting and how you're trying to counter draft to try to eliminate gaining the military, gaining the science, just trying to surge for those victory points and make it a victory point game. There's so many levels within just such a simple game, depending on play style of the people involved.
And playstyle is something that I wanted to bring up, because there are some games that have actually quite a bit of player interactivity built into the cake, but no one uses them. And then when somebody does, it's kind of like you're talking about, right? But then when somebody does, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot this game even worked that way.
Yeah.
I forgot you could even do that. So a recent example, we're playing Res Arcana with our friend Corey. So you, I, and him are in a game. I love Res Arcana. I don't play with anybody who uses the powers on the cards to attack other players.
And Corey's doing it left and right.
And he's doing it left and right. But here's the thing. In particular, he's using the Elvish Bow. If you're familiar with the game, the Elvish Bow can either attack or you can draw a card with it. Now, in my opinion, it is a far superior ability to be able to draw a card in that game. If I get the Elvish Bow, I'm using it to draw a card 100% of the time. And he's using it to attack. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot that that's a thing you could choose to do. I don't think it's a smart thing to do, but you can do it. So it's actually turned that game into a lot more of that player interaction. And it's kind of changed how I've thought about the game, because I've been like, okay, well, this is annoying. I better do something to kind of protect myself from this.
You have to
because he's doing a heavy attack strategy. And sometimes 51st State, most of the people I play with, they don't expend the resources to attack the other people at the table, to destroy their stuff. Sometimes you play a game with somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm totally attacking your thing. And you're like, you can't do that. Oh yeah, you totally can. You totally can do that. Oh my gosh.
Well, you look at the 4 of us, a lot of us avoid that kind of take that feeling or take that mechanic in games. And if a game has that in there, that's not something that we highlight usually at our table. And I don't know if it's because we all have tender feelings, or if why we kind of avoid that in most of our games, but it makes our game nights more enjoyable, I think. Dave doesn't get mad and throw stuff at me anymore.
Any thoughts, Dave?
No, I concur.
I think there's a lot of games we play that really kind of fit into that category. Maracaibo fits into that. We have a lot of games that really are very much you're doing your own thing with some player interaction and player interconnectivity, right? You're competing for a few things on the board. You're competing to deliver goods first before they get taken up.
Completing tasks or quests, whatever they are.
For the most part, you're kind of building your own tableau and doing your own thing. So I think there's a lot of games that kind of have that player interconnectivity that don't have a lot of player interaction per se, that are, when I think of player interaction, there's a lot of there's a lot of negative experiences at the game table. I think you're right, Nathan. I think we tend to prefer games that have the player interconnectivity rather than the direct player interaction in that conflict.
I think you're 100% right, Andy. And I think exactly what you're saying is probably one of the reasons it actually holds some games back for us. I actually think of Moonrakers, the bidding, which is a huge part of that game. For me, it actually kind of holds the game back from being as good as I want it to be. Whereas I know for other people, that's what makes it so great. So I think you're right. I think you're actually spot on with that. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I love Moonraker. It's not one that I'm anxious to play with you, Doug, or necessarily even with you, Andy, because that whole bargaining, right, that is not a mechanic that you guys seek after.
Well, to be clear, I do still like it, and I'll still play it. I think it's still a really good game, but I'm just saying in my mind, that sort of holds it back as opposed to pushing it forward, which is so the opposite for so many other people, right?
Right. And we look at a lot of that direct conflict too, is for a lot of us, it's something that kind of holds us back, whereas other people are very much into that aggressive, game night's not game night unless somebody's tipping the table over. So apparently you got to play Terraforming Mars, the dice game, to make it a game night.
Apparently. Yeah. And I used to be more into those war games and the direct conflict games, and I've just gotten to where I've kind of lost my taste for them.
I agree. I'm in that same boat.
Played enough of them to know that I don't usually enjoy the experience. Now, we can totally flip the script on this for us as a group by talking about cooperative games. The minute that you start talking about cooperative games, then all this changes, right? Because the player interaction, the communication, the strategy, coordinating attacks, working together as a team, 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Maybe even 8 enthusiastic thumbs up.
Probably.
As we'll discover more of that as we continue on these next couple of episodes.
I was foreshadowing.
I think he was setting up a segue.
Yeah.
I was, because that is what we need to get to as the meat of this episode, which is our top 5 cooperative games.
Dave, you weren't here for the last episode and you're going to school mostly, so you don't have a top 5, and that's okay. We're glad to have you here.
I'll just pitch in my 2 cents every once in a while as you guys are talking about games.
All right, and sometimes we'll give you your 2 cents back, and sometimes we'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sounds good.
I'm going to spend your 2 cents so fast.
It's burning a hole in Andy's pocket.
Nathan, why don't you start us off?
Well, actually, we have kind of an interesting situation here.
We do.
Because Andy and I's number 5 is higher up on somebody else's list, and Nathan's number 5 is higher up on my list. So we actually have to jump straight to number 4.
Let's do it.
And my number 4 is higher up on somebody else's list as well.
It sure is.
We have some crossover, baby.
Quite a bit of crossover on this one.
All right, we'll go with my number 4. My number 4 is Dead Men Tell No Tales. Playing this game has been some of my favorite cooperative experiences. It does such a good job. You really have to work together. I mean, there are cooperative games that's like, okay, well, you can kind of do your own thing or whatever. I think a great cooperative game is when you have to figure out how to beat the game, and that means everybody has to do their part. Everybody has a specific thing they need to do on their turn. It may not be obvious. I don't like it when it's like, okay, you have to do this, right? You have to do this. You have to do this. On your turn, you have to do this. I love it when there's a million things you have to do, and you get to pick one of those things to get done.
Yeah, which is nice because this really avoids the alpha player.
For sure.
In a cooperative game, because sometimes you run into that where you have the alpha player that's going to tell everybody what they have to do on their turn. And with Dead Men Tell No Tales, everybody's got to do everything. So
Yeah. There, you have to fight fires. If you have the Kraken expansion, you're fighting Krakens or cutting off tentacles, or fight skeleton crew, or get the deckhands mitigated. There are so many ways to lose the game. Everybody has to work together to try to avoid that and get those treasures off that ship so you can escape and do so successfully. It's a bit of mayhem, it's chaotic, and it is a ton of fun.
And when we were talking about Halloween and how somatic Halloween is, comparing Halloween and Dead Men Tell No Tales, I think these 2 games in particular absorb that game theme, cinematic theme, where you feel like you are on a pirate ship trying to collect the booty and get off the boat as quick as you can, just like you're trying to get away from Michael Myers.
Dead Men Tell No Tales is always a cinematic experience. It's excellent that way.
I still remember the very first time we talked about it. That was the first time this idea of a game being cinematic came up. And at first I was like, really? Like what? And then I played it and I was like, holy cow. Yeah, it really was.
Well, and it does such a great job at making other players at the table engaged in your turn. And you care about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Because it really does affect things. And it's like, oh, what's going to happen? I don't know. How are we going to deal with all this stuff? The action system in this, where you use the coins, and if you don't use all your actions, you can actually pass them to the next player over.
Which is nice.
I love that. If you can't be super efficient with your actions, being able to give them to somebody else who could maybe like really run with them and have like a super turn, I think is just genius.
One of the best co-op games I've played.
Doug, I believe that takes us to number 4 for you.
Number 4 for me, which I'm actually kind of surprised wasn't higher on Andy's list. So I'm excited to get his thoughts on it. This was Return to Dark Tower, number
It
4.
didn't even make his top 5, did it?
It didn't. It was close. It was probably my 6th.
Really, really close. I love Return to Dark Tower. I love the cooperative feel. And I guess I should say just really quick, as I was thinking about my top, I really tried to select games, the quote unquote cooperation was sort of critical to the gameplay, which is exactly why you will not find Arkham Horror, the LCG, which is my number 1 game of all time. You won't find it at the top of this list because while it does provide some amazing cooperative play, it doesn't have to. Everything scales down to 1 player, and I've played it a lot with 1 player. You don't have to play that as a cooperative experience. The games that are on my top cooperatives list really force players to lean into the cooperative nature and talk and work together, and it forces them to do things as a group, as a team. So that was one thing that I really was focused on. The other thing too was, whether it was a campaign or just a single one-off scenario type game, that wasn't really even a consideration at all. It's just really how well it did at being a cooperative game. So with that said, Return to Dark Tower definitely fits this bill. I love the variety of setups. I think it's absolutely genius. You have a variety of characters. You have different adversaries, monsters, minions, all these different things that you can select. So the setup's going to be different every single time. I feel anyway that you get something kind of new and different, especially with the expansion content. My only complaint at this point is that I do think it needs a little bit more. Because we've played it so much, I'm ready for some more content on the digital side. Even if it's not on the actual production, like the produced component side, I'm ready for an influx of new digital components. Stories.
That's why it hit my number 6.
I could see that.
It needs more on the digital side of things.
Totally agree. And I absolutely could see that. I love that each player is given their own quadrant of the land. Everything is a cooperative experience, right? It's that cooperative group thinking is critical to winning the game. Who has what advantages and what are they working toward, like to get more of those advantages? Who's going to go do the quests? Who's going to take care of companion quest or whatever it is? Who's going to go take care of the adversary quest? All those different things.
Have you ever played this 2 players?
No, I have not.
It is tough.
Is it really?
It's pretty dang.
You've played it with Caden,
I've played it with Caden, 2 players.
Well, because if you don't have the full player count, you still can play on all 4 quadrants, right?
You have to play on all 4 quadrants.
But no one sort of quote unquote owns those quadrants.
Correct. So there are 2 quadrants you don't own, but you still have to manage everything.
So you got 2 players trying to put out fires across the board rather than 4.
It is really tough.
Wow. I haven't tried that.
One thing I was just going to point out, like Andy was talking about with Dead Men Tell No Tales, kind of have to have everybody taking care of different things all the times. This game has that same kind of feel to it, right? Like you do have to take care of all those different things. So somebody has got to be doing that. Somebody has to be over here doing this. You have to be juggling everything all at once.
Yeah. And one of the really cool things, I thought that the monuments expansion, so it's the Covenant expansion, but it added the monuments. And in order to build those monuments, you have to meet certain conditions. Anybody at the table can help meet those conditions. But sometimes it means slightly inefficient play. I'm going to do this thing that's maybe just a little less efficient, but it's going to mark 1 more tick toward building the monument over there for you, so it's worth it. Kind of changes the way you strategize.
Well, and you have to look at it. It's inefficient in the short term, but getting those monuments built prevents wastelands from from coming on the board, which ultimately
loses you the game.
Right. I mean, if those wastelands come out, the recipe for inefficiency.
All efficiency is out the door at that point.
Short-term loss for a long-term gain. Timing that and deciding when and how you're going to do that is just another great component to the game. My number 4, Return to Dark Tower.
Nathan.
All right, back to
let's go to number 3 for you.
Let's see if we can do my number 3.
You sure can, because it's a double crossover with me.
Our number 3. So my number 3 is the same as both yours and Andy's number 5, and that is Lord of the Rings: Journeys in Middle-earth.
So good.
This game is fantastic. Running through Middle-earth, you can play some of the known characters, you can play some of the less known characters, evolve the way the decks are managed and the discovery and the way the area movement goes across the board. It's scenario based, so you have some stories that you're following, that you're inside a tavern, you're inside a cave, you're running in the wilderness. All this combined makes a fantastic game.
I'm kind of surprised to see this game on all of your lists, to be honest.
Have you not played it?
I played it once a couple years ago, whatever it was. None of you guys seemed overly in love with this game. And I thought it had a lot of potential, and I was super excited to play it again, but it just never really happened a whole lot.
It's interesting because I think for most of us, we've played this within our own households more than we have together as a group.
Yeah, it was on my 10 for 10 one year, and I played it all solo.
Okay.
and it was a great experience.
Amberly and I together have logged close to 50 plays of this.
Nice. I really enjoyed it. Excited to play it some more. But as goes with a lot of our cooperative games, we don't get them.
Yeah, there's so many other games that hit the table.
It's a campaign game that requires you to play multiple, and especially, like, I will say one of my criticisms of the game, and it's a very, very minor criticism, is just that the leveling up is a little bit of a slow burn, especially at
For sure.
first. If you start it and don't give it time, if you don't give it like 3 or 4 missions into the story that you're playing, which usually is done in somewhere between like 11 and 15 games. But if you don't give it at least 3 or 4 in to get your character leveled up and start making some real progress, it can be a little slow. As a group, getting a game that's a little slow like that at the beginning, getting it to the table repeated times is a little bit of a barrier. So I can totally see what you're saying. However, like Amberly and I've played through almost everything. I think there's only one of the digital campaigns that they released that we haven't played through. So the Lord of the Rings theme, that like ambiance and feel, Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, whatever, they absolutely nailed it with this.
I agree. 100%.
Absolutely great. It really leans into that whole idea of you're like this fellowship headed out on a quest or an adventure. Yeah, I love it. I love Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle Earth.
So that's my number 3, and Andy's and Doug's number 5.
Speaking of Andy,
My number 3, we have had some very late nights playing this game.
Have.
And some very long days playing this game, in fact. My number 3 is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. When Logan turns into a pumpkin, which is usually around 10 o'clock at night, we can usually get him to last until midnight, and then he's like, I gotta go. And then you're like,
Harry Potter?
Harry Potter? And he's like, dang it. Okay. And we'll play through 3 years of Harry Potter, and it'll be like 2 or 3 in the morning. Yeah. it's Logan's weakness. But we've had some fun experiences with this, and I love the fact that it is sometimes it's really difficult. Can be a crazy difficult game to beat. Other times, not so much. And it kind of depends on the year and what perks you get as you are going through the years and what abilities you're unlocking and everything. Because it can get to where it's, okay, this year was actually pretty easy. We got some new stuff. And then the next year comes out and you're like, oh my gosh.
but then it also depends on the order in which the bad guys come out.
Totally does.
For sure.
Because some of them synergize off of each other, and the combinations that can come out of the villains
Devastating.
can be devastating. It can be so difficult to defeat anything. And you end up like, okay, yeah, we just lost. Hardcore, we just lost.
And that's one of the great things about this game is that there's just so much replayability because of all those things that you mentioned.
Right,
They
because
can
of the challenge.
Completely change the challenge.
And I would recommend, if anybody's kind of on the fence, or maybe you've played like the first year or something of this, don't give up on it, because the way that they roll out those years, I think, is genius, and it ramps up. It really does.
It totally does.
The difficulty, the influx of really cool, I think highly thematic and fun cards that can hit the table that you start getting in that market that you can start adding to your characters. The way your characters, they have like sort of an asymmetric ability that they can do that kind of levels up throughout the process. You start throwing in expansion content into that. I'm not the world's biggest Harry Potter fan by a long shot, but it is thematic and fun, and you really do feel like you're kind of that core little group of kids going through those 7 years and defeating bad guys and frankly kind of getting beat up along the way. You definitely have games that you lose and it's like, well, shuffle them back up, reset the board. We got to try that again. We lost.
And this is something, I mean, you guys have sat through, played all 7 years. I played a whole bunch of other games while you guys went through that one, and I'm pretty sure you guys probably had more fun.
It was fun when you're kind of committed to playing through those 7 years and everyone's just going fast. Like everyone's just flying through their turns as fast as they can. You are just constantly, I mean, the one time we played it at BryceCon, which did take us like 4 or 5 hours, but it was like 4 or 5 hours of just non-stop deck building.
Yeah, it was great.
It's really fun.
So you mentioned you're not the biggest Harry Potter fan, and you just got done talking about Lord of the Rings. So I have to ask, Dumbledore or Gandalf?
For what?
For what? Yeah, are they like in a head-to-head battle?
Just hopscotch. Yeah.
Hopscotch?
Yeah.
Prison rules?
Probably Dumbledore, just because that seems like more Dumbledore's thing.
It totally does,
Gandalf
doesn't it?
seems like he'd look at the hopscotch board and walk away. He'd be like, Middle Earth is in danger. What is this? Like, why am I dealing with this?
Grab a moth and take off.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will take us to my number 3, which was Nathan's number 4. And that is Stars of Ikarios.
This is a game that made my top 5, and I don't even own it because it's awesome.
Yeah, it is a fantastic game. Such an enjoyable space adventure with friends. My fear is that there's people out there who are playing this solo, and they're probably having a pretty fun time, but this is not a game to play solo. This is a game to play with other people at the table. You've got all these really fast-paced dogfights, planetary exploration that keeps everyone engaged. Constantly you're just feeling like you're working together. Ship abilities synergize, right? Like Andy's playing this really cool kind of support class. Nathan's playing just kind of a straight-up fighter, and I'm kind of somewhere in between trying to figure my life out. But it works. They kind of come together in a really fun way. There's tons of simultaneous play, which is something that I really like about this. You can kind of be making decisions and making maneuvers at the same time. And then when you make attacks, you're like, okay, I want to attack this person, and you kind of decide the timing and do some of that stuff. So there's tons of that can just take place at the same time. And then, of course, the game just presents some really fun decisions, whether it's like you're exploring space and you just run across like a card you read and it's like, well, we need to make a decision, or you're doing like a planetary exploration. It's like, which way do we go? What do we try to do? How do we try to achieve this? Or do we bail? Like, are we just, is this done? Like,
do we support the smugglers, or do we stop the sniper? Do we do this? All sorts of decisions going on.
Who are we going to support? And those decisions are so much more fun to make as a group because they lead to some fun conversation.
And one thing that we've discovered is that they also become impactful down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that I really loved about that as well.
Yeah, 100%. I love that about it. Love Stars Vicarios. And that will take us to number 2.
So number 2, Back to Me, is another game that I feel, going back in our cinematic theme, is another game that emulates the movie fantastically. Yes, that's a word. It is a word, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
it is now.
It is.
Okay. And that's Big Trouble in Little China. One of my all-time favorite cult classic movies. And the way this game develops that story and brings out so much of the story that's not in the movie that you don't see. You get so much of Cousin Eddie's background, Gracie Law's background, and I can't even remember the other lady.
I've never seen it, so couldn't be able to help you.
What?
Yeah. I've never seen
Blasphemy.
Big Trouble in Little China. I probably should go rent it.
You should. Well, you can borrow mine.
I should probably go borrow it. That's what I meant.
Because it's right up there above Three Amigos.
Is it really?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great show.
It's better than Three Amigos?
It's
what?
Such a great show. And I love Three Amigos.
It is a fantastic movie.
Okay.
Full of great one-liners.
I'll have to get to it.
Yeah. It's
awesome.
You'll enjoy it. But Big Trouble in Little China, the game absorbs all of that theme, all of that cinematic feel.
Dave said it was a good movie.
I'm not going to go watch it again. It's way too old.
That's what I was getting at. I'm like, what? It's more than a year old. What the heck?
It's outside Dave's 10-year limit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a 10-year limit. I think it's a 2-year limit.
Is that what it is? But yeah, you're missing out, Doug. It is such a great show. And this game just absorbs all of that feel and gives you great gameplay. The only issue I run into this game is that you do have the tendency of one player kind of hogging all the experience.
Yeah.
And when it comes down towards the end game, you have one person who's way more advanced than the other players, which is a bummer if you're one of the other players for sure.
Is that kind of like when Dave hogs all the gold in Gloomhaven?
Kind of, yeah, loots everything and then says, what?
And grabs all the treasure chests.
Yeah. That he can't share any of that loot. And what? I don't get it. Why are you guys mad at me stealing everything?
Why would I go attack that guy when I can pick up like 3 coins over here?
So true.
That's awesome. No, I have not seen the movie and I haven't played the game, so clearly I have some education ahead of me.
You
do for sure.
It's a great game, and I like the fact that you have the first part, the first epic of the game, or the first act of the game, and that board flips over and it completely changes everything you're trying to do.
Yeah, the style of the game changes
completely.
The Audacity track is gone. The game's completely different on the other side.
I've played it a couple times and I've enjoyed myself both times.
Yeah. That was one that I was worried I was going to pay a nerd tax on, and I was so glad I picked that up.
Excellent. Very good.
Andy, that's my number 2.
My number 2 has a similar issue.
Issue?
Yes, issue as your number 2, and that is Shadows of Brimstone. And we have had similar problems where someone ends up leveling up more than other players, right? So I'm going to swear for a second. We came up with a house rule.
Shut your dirty mouth.
It was a good house rule.
There's no such thing as a good house rule.
There is actually. We share, now when we play Shadows of Brimstone, we share experience, we pool it and just divide it. And we pool and share coins and divide it at the end of the game. Or at the end of the scenario, rather.
Blasphemy.
And it actually has worked out a lot better. You don't have anybody falling behind on leveling up. You don't have any disgruntled players, and a lot more contentment at the table.
I'm actually
I like that
surprised.
contentment. Yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised that isn't like an official variant in the rulebook, to
I
be
am
totally
too.
honest.
Yeah, because the times that we were playing and you guys would run in, eliminate everything in the room, and I would make it into the room.
You're like, hey, how's it? Oh, yeah, everything's dead.
Everything's dead. Okay. And then you go into the next room, and by the time I got to the next room, everything was dead.
And we've also mitigated that by playing on a higher difficulty level.
Oh, okay. To
So
make
that-
it so monsters last longer.
Yep, exactly.
That's good.
And that just increases your experience. You level up faster as well. Anyway,
And that's not necessarily a house rule. That is just
That's built in.
That's
Yep.
built in.
yep,
Okay.
you can make it so it's more, you can play on a higher difficulty level. But we've had a lot of fun with this. We've got a group with myself, Logan, our friend Brian Hirschbach, and then my daughter's boyfriend, Justin. And we have had so much fun playing through. This is probably the group that we've actually stuck together longest and are actually playing through scenario after scenario after scenario instead of restarting. And it's been a ton of fun.
And this is one of the few games that will get Logan to blow off work to show up.
Yes, it is. Yep. if Logan hasn't been coming to game nights because he's between school and work, he just has no time. But if it's Shadows of Brimstone night, he makes time.
And then you just mention Harry Potter afterwards.
Yep, that's so true. Funny thing is he probably would now because he hardly makes it to game night. But yeah, we've had a ton of fun. Logan likes to describe it as Cthulhu, Cowboy Cthulhu.
I get that. It's
Yep.
an apt
Totally get that.
description.
Although, I mean, I think it was the base game was more Cowboy Cthulhu. At this point, it's pretty much just everything Cthulhu. I mean,
That's true.
that there's a class and a theme for pretty much anything you can think of out there.
They did the Far East expansions to it, so you have that whole genre. You have all the heroes that you can play that you can have the samurai, you can have the assassin. There's just a ton. And now they have the Vikings that have come out, and they have the Spanish that has come out as well. And they're coming out with more and more. They're going to be coming out with I believe an Egyptian
Oh, that sounds
Oh,
way
stuff that's
that would
coming
be
out.
cool.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I may be getting that mixed up with something else. But anyway, I love it. It's so much fun. It's such a good game. I love going through portals and doing other worlds, and all the other worlds have different rules and different things that happen. It's awesome. But no, we've had a great time with this game. It is one that I always look forward to getting to the table. It definitely has a cooperative feel, especially with those higher difficulty levels. Sometimes you get those rooms completely filled with monsters, and it kind of forces you to stick together. It's one of those where one person's holding that lantern, and you can only go so far away from that person, and you typically give it to whoever's the slowest, which kind of forces those faster characters to not get too far ahead. The different missions will have different objectives. I mean, there's a lot of definitely fighting monsters, and it's a grind as far as that goes.
but a good grind.
But a good grind, for sure. And there are just so dang many monsters in this. There's just so much content that it always feels fresh. You're not fighting the same things over and over and over again. It's always something different with different abilities and different challenges every single time you play.
It is a great game.
Yeah. When you first opened up talking about it and you were about the issues of the game, I thought you were going to mention the issues of it constantly draining your wallet.
Yeah, same.
It definitely does that too.
There's so much content.
There is.
So much. And like a little bit overwhelming, but incredibly fun. I mean, the variety that it gives you to play with is staggering.
That content is the one reason that I really want to love the game, because that's usually my problem with so many other games.
All right. Well, that is a fantastic number 2 choice, which takes us to my number 2, and that is Oathsworn Into the Deepwood.
Such a good game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is, in my opinion, one of the best cooperative boss battlers I've experienced.
The way it leads up to that boss battle, phenomenal.
Fantastic story, theme, and components. I love that the story phase doesn't overstay its welcome. but it's still really engaging. And I mean, it's one of those where you don't want to miss out on what is happening. The story is incredibly engaging, really well narrated with the app, just
Very
so well done.
narrated.
And the boss fights make you feel like you're really powerful. I think that's one of the things that I love about it. It uses a cooldown system on your abilities. It has the battle flow. So you feel like you are a force to be reckoned with. You are a powerful, powerful character. You just can't spam your power, which makes it strategic and fun and adds so much depth to the experience that you're having.
It's an essential part of the game because I think if you didn't have that battle flow, it would feel like you're just, doing your heroic sweep, or whatever it is over and over again. But the way you have to manage your cards, your life, what you're using to block damage, very well done, blends together and makes an exceptional game.
I like this as far as the story driven part of this game. I think this has been executed almost perfectly because I find myself, I mean, I love narrative games. I love storytelling games. They're some of my favorites, but sometimes I have to think, okay, really, what's going on? What's the overreaching arc in this? And I have not ever felt that in Oathsworn.
Yeah.
Right.
They have done such a phenomenal job telling the story, and you know exactly what's going on and what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
That it's just, I feel like it was flawlessly done.
Unless your speaker isn't loud enough.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
you're at Icon.
And you're at Icon. We're all leaning in nose to nose so we can hear the speaker.
That is true.
Great game. I loved it.
Yeah,
I love being nose to nose.
Do you?
How about cheek to
absolutely.
cheek? Even better.
Even better.
Oathsworn is a fantastic pick, Doug. That would have been up there on my list as well. Nathan, I believe that leads us to you for your number one.
Your number one surprised me.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, quite a bit for me too. Yeah.
Well, I think it's one that I'm very anxious to try with you lot. And I think,
Us lot.
yeah.
That's awesome.
And
This isn't Harry Potter.
no,
right?
no, it is not
Okay.
Harry Potter. And I think after you play it, I think you too will be surprised and go, why haven't we played this game sooner?
I hope so. Yeah, I actually really hope so.
I've looked at this in the store so many times. And I just never bought it.
Well, you don't need to. I have it,
Hooray.
and it's full of great content.
I believe that I played this game with Michael and Katie Bishop, my friends from Washington, a couple of years ago, and it is awesome.
I guess at some point we should name what
Yes.
the game is.
Yeah, we
That
shouldn't
would make
bury
sense.
the lead any further.
Yeah, and this is Legends of Andor, and there's 3 sets of it that have some expansion content. There's new content that is out, and I haven't experienced the second one, so I don't know how much that has evolved. This is something I started playing with my wife, and she very much enjoyed it until we got to the first real scenario. After we took the training wheels off, she decided it wasn't for her.
That's too bad.
I was really kind of bummed out about that, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Frosthaven because that's what we've started playing in its place. But we haven't gotten to that second scenario either. You guys, I think, will very much enjoy this, and just the whole evolution of trying to manage, because this is one that you're going to play, you're going to lose, and then you're going to learn, and then you're going to try it again, and then you're going to probably lose again until you go through it a couple of times and work out the bugs and decide on how you can resolve the story and complete the campaign. But there's so much in this box, and then you start to add in the extra content, new characters. Legends of Andor is a game from 2012 that's still pretty relevant and still pretty versatile. So I am very excited to get you guys to the table with this. You lot.
I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, for it to make your number one after a relatively short period of time
Yep.
really has my curiosity piqued. So I am very eager.
And there are some great games. I very much enjoy very much enjoy everything else that was on the list too. Big Trouble in Little China, Stars of Ikarios, Journeys in Middle-earth, and Oathsworn, all those exceptional games. But just the draw for this is really kind of pulling me in.
That's excellent. Very good. And Andy, you're number one.
It's an oldie but a goodie.
It doesn't surprise anyone. I mean, Nathan's blew us away. Yours doesn't surprise anyone.
No, it
but
doesn't.
it's a great choice.
So my number one is my number one game, and that is Descent 2nd Edition. and I've talked about it a ton on the podcast. I'm not going to like dive into it very much, but the cooperativeness of this game is tactical, right? So you're delving in a dungeon, and the maps are coming out, whether you're playing with an overlord or whether you're playing with the application on a device. But there's a lot of teamwork that is involved in working together to get this done, to fight the monsters, to get through the dungeon quickly, because you are timed. And how many times have we started getting deadly perils and you start feeling that anxiety of like, shoot, we have really got to hurry up, and we still have a ton of stuff that feels like we've got to get done. We've got 3 tiles that we haven't even explored yet. But I love how you can build your character. You can build it in a very unique way that will synergize with the other players. Between that and the gear that you decide to pick up in town, in between dungeons. And it's one of those games that just, as Doug would put it fires on all cylinders for me.
Have you even mentioned what the game is?
Yeah, Descent Second
Okay.
Edition.
I totally missed you mentioning the title.
Nathan, you're the only one that buries the lead like that.
Okay. Because I thought I was going to give you the trophy, because you had definitely buried it a lot deeper than I did.
But it's a great game. Hope that someday it gets dethroned, and it might. But so far,
I hope so too, because whatever game dethrones it is going to be a fantastic game.
yes,
Absolutely.
Would have to be amazing.
it would have to be amazing.
Well, you mentioned the cooperative play in it. It even comes down to the market cards and the treasure that you find. You're in conversation about, what are we going to do with this? Should we get this one as we level up? What do you think between this? What's going to help the group more? If I take this skill, or there's this one that takes my character in a completely different direction. I think all of it just creates such great team play.
Leveling up feels like it should be almost a group decision.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
it's like, okay, I need to decide what card to take. Ooh, what do you think about this one, guys? I don't know. This one does this. Would it be better? I mean, it really does. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. It definitely feels like more of a group decision, even though it's your own character. And I love that. Yeah, the cooperative component of Descent Second Edition is fantastic.
And there's so many different combinations that you can do.
Love that game.
I-
Someone make something better.
I think we only have one left.
Well, let's wrap this puppy up with my number 1. My number 1 is Cthulhu, Death May Die.
This one actually kind of surprises me. I honestly thought your Oathsworn was going to be higher than this.
I do love Oathsworn, but Cthulhu, it just works for me. I think what I like about Cthulhu, and probably the reason why overshadows Oathsworn, is because as it stands right now, Oathsworn is not really designed to be a one-off thing. They do have rules. You can go in and you can just have like one battle against a boss, but it requires that you kind of have a group of 4 to have the very best experience possible. You need to have a group of 4, and you need to be playing through the campaign. Whereas Cthulhu Death May Die is also a fantastic boss battler of sorts. I mean, there is definitely a boss fight, although there's a little more exploration and objectives and some of those things that come beforehand. But Cthulhu Death May Die can be kind of pulled off, played with a variety of people, played in kind of a one-off scenario type setting. It just overtakes it by just a little bit. I genuinely like the theme. I think they absolutely nailed that theme. I'm not the biggest like Lovecraft Cthulhu theme guy. It's not like if it has that theme on it, I'm all over it. That's really actually not the case at all, but they've done it so well, captured the essence of, I think, what makes a game like that fun. You're going crazy, and more than likely people are going to die before it's over. This big Hail Mary save the universe from the Elder God kind of game. And I just love the way that it all comes together. So I think that's probably why it overtakes Oathsworn, but they're really close. And honestly, I mean, a day could definitely come when Oathsworn takes over, and they have announced an Oathsworn 2.
Oh, really?
So maybe that'll be the one. I'll give you some examples of what I love about this game. So this game, more than any other that I play, has people at the table saying things like this. I think I should go over here and help with this objective. Or I can take out these monsters here and clear a path for so-and-so. Or I'll draw the enemies into this room so people can move up and take this objective. Or probably my personal favorite is, I'm going to grab all these guys and go sacrifice myself so you guys can go nuke the boss. And those are the types of like comments and decisions and things that get like said at the table every single time without fail. That's the kind of play that this is. An incredible cooperative experience, because you have to be working together as a team. Even if you are being incredibly efficient as a team, it's still going to come right down to the wire. You add on top of that the just incredible variety of characters you can play, scenarios that you can play, as well as elder gods that you can take on, and you just mix and match them however you want. It's awesome. It's a different experience every single time. I've played through everything in season 1. We've gotten through most of season 2. I've tried most of the characters, and I've tried most of the elder gods. I think we've beaten all of them at least once. I just have the retail stuff. Like, my copy of this game is only the retail version. I didn't back this, so I don't have any of the Kickstarter exclusive stuff. Variety that even just the retail things offers is really staggering.
I've only played this game the one time, and that was a year ago at SaltCon, and it was at the end of the night, and I was pretty tired, and I honestly don't even remember the game that much. So this is something I'm very much looking forward to trying again for the first time.
Excellent. Well, I'm always eager to play it. So anytime you would like, I'll bust it out.
Sounds amazing.
And of course, they're doing the Fear of the Unknown, which should be coming soon. And they offered all of the exclusives as a reprint option. So of course, like the sucker I am, I gave Simon all my money. Pretty soon I should be getting a lot more Cthulhu Death May Die stuff, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it.
That's awesome. Shut up and take my money. That's the Simon theme.
Yeah, it really is.
And Flying Frog.
So there's Shadows of Brimstone. Right?
Yep.
Guys, we're doing something wrong. We need to make a game where people just give us all their money.
For sure.
Thanks for listening to our top 5 co-op games. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you'll check us out next week as we talk about the top 5 co-op games that we don't own. Until next time. That doesn't sound right.
That's Nathan. That's Nathan's line.
No,
that's your line.
else.
Never mind. That's your line.
Until next week.
Next week.
Next time.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table. I got nothing on that one.
No team,
I was trying to come up with
beating the
some
boss up
cinematic.
as a group.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community. Yeah, I was trying to come up with the somatic theme because that's what really attracts me so much about these games is the somatic feel of
I was a little,
feel.
I gotta say, I was a little surprised there was no Gloomhaven.
There's a reason. Gloomhaven paid its fiddle.
Yeah, I wondered if that was all it was.
Yeah,
Is,
it's
you know
not.
what? This is a game that we loved, and we've put it to bed.
For me, it's ridden off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I totally want to play more Folklore. I really enjoy folklore.
We were talking about that on Friday, actually. We're just going to start over so that
Cool.
Doug can have a better experience.
And Nathan.
Nathan was having a fine experience.
Was he?
I told him he did.
Oh, you told him he was? Okay.
I was having a fine experience, apparently.
Because Andy told you so. Nathan, you are having a fun time playing this game.
Yes, sir. Thank you. May I have some more fun?
Fantastic.
Awesome.